Hey everyone, I'm Tanner, an investor here at the Legal Tech Fund. Today on In Studio, I'm joined by John, founder and CEO of Narrative. As law firms continue to invest pretty heavily and experiment with AI tools, even outside of the practice of law, the business of law, for example, like how a firm prices work, tracks their scopes, and protects margins, that area remains fairly fragmented. Pricing decisions still rely on siloed historical data, manual precedent searches, and pretty limited visibility into where overrun happens and why. So, Narrative is building the infrastructure layer that changes that. Narrative is a AI native platform that turns a firm's existing matter, time, and pricing data into clear, defensible commercial decisions from the initial estimate through to delivery. John, you came to this as a former Freshfields corporate lawyer and a founder who previously scaled a venture-backed startup with 20 million raised. You know what it takes to build for complex markets. So it's great to have you on in studio. Let's start at maybe the very beginning. What made you leave Big Law to start this?
Well, thanks, Tanner, so much for having me. And of course, hello, everyone. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I was practicing associate at Freshfields for a few years. I mainly kind of navigate or kind of focused in on the tech side of things in terms of the clients that the firm was having. And I was just really curious about, okay, like what are these products that companies are buying or selling or kind of talking about? And so I got really interested on the tech side, really wanted to dive in. So I got involved a lot on the innovation side of things at the firm, realized I quite like building things. So I left, I did my own venture back startup, scaled and exited that. And so then after that company really wanted to build something else and wanted to build in legal because I know a lot of folks. It's a space that's very familiar to me. And there's also, I think, to build something well and right, you have to understand the nuances, all the different dynamics at play. But when I was looking around to kind of, what problem to solve, there was a dime a dozen kind of contract automation, practice of law types of tools. But like you were saying, nothing really focused on the business of law side. How do we actually help firms and partners and other individuals in the profession really elevate all of the things that underpin and matter to our clients from a financial but also from a relationship perspective? And that was kind of the genesis of Narrative, is looking at that problem set and how we can really elevate and agentify a lot of those components.
Awesome. Let's get into it then. So for those who are not maybe familiar with Narrative yet, what does the platform do? And tell a little bit more about the problem it seeks to solve.
Yeah, sure. So high level, we're really focused on building that AI powered pricing matter management layer that really supports kind of the business teams and units at firms, and then of course as well the partners with their relationships. The main problems that we kind of are looking at is, one, we start at the source. Law firms have a mountain of data and information, but to leverage and use it is really, really difficult. And there's a lot of inaccuracies and vagaries that kind of sit underneath that as well. So we've been able to develop a system that enhances a lot of that historical data, create a really rich profile that we then leverage to make sure that our pricing is data driven, handles all the different types of AFAs or other kind of challenges that we get from clients, starts also being able to map what different tools we're using on the AI front for the actual practice of law side, being able to quantify those components. And then the kind of the problem set around, once we have won these deals, being able to track how we're performing against in and out of against our budgets, in and out of scope work. What if our budgets are changing? How are we performing on profitability across different types of arrangements, etc.? And also do away with some of the quite annoying tasks that lawyers have to do, like WIP updates or OCG compliance or kind of reporting side of things as well. And so thinking about how all of those components, all of those problems tie in together to have a compounding effect, to actually say, hey, we might be solving one discrete component, which is how we start with firms and how we enter into that relationship. But problem A is relevant to problem B, which ties into problem C. And being able to take all of those together and have them speak to each other is really powerful in terms of the value that we're able to generate for firms.
I love it. Let's walk through what narrative actually does with the firm's data. You mentioned, there's an incredible treasure trove or mountain of law firm data. What
Yeah.
goes into narrative, and what does a partner pricing team get out of it?
Yeah, so to start, we have a very layered approach in terms of kind of the data that we're looking at and how we're plugging into systems. To start, we like to keep it as easy as possible and focus on core value. So we take primarily two data sources just to kind of set everything up and get started on the pricing side and also on some of the AI tracking components as well. And those are, one, the actual raw unstructured time cards. So the time, like the narratives that people are recording, etc., and two, any associated matter metadata. So all of this, by and large, for most of the firms we kind of interact with, exists in a data lake or a warehouse, or is exportable quite easily. And so that means that we're able to start delivering value within weeks of working with firms, and in a way that doesn't add a lot to their kind of technical stack or kind of their pipeline, which obviously every technical team at firms at the moment are inundated with tasks. What that allows us to do is we enhance a lot of those time entries to a kind of one, compared to human reviewed kind of matters and kind of data points, we drive a 10 to 15% accuracy improvement. We then have a kind of a whole synthetic testing environment where we've created our own benchmarks, which track in the kind of 90 percentile of accuracy for all of those block billing, vague entries, lack of time coding, etc. And then we leverage all of those pieces to be able to surface the most relevant benchmark data for pricing teams, again, in the 95 percentile of accuracy tracking. We also use those pieces to be able to surface for the AI tracking in terms of the impact that different tools and platforms that firms are investing in, and what is the quantifiable impact that those are having on our revenue, on our workflows, etc. So we really take a very contextual approach to create a really rich picture and a much more accurate picture that we then leverage for a lot of the other kind of value adds that we're delivering for firms.
So when you think about pricing historically, some might have characterized it as like an art versus science. You guys are building, would you describe it as an infrastructure to make it more of a science than an art?
Yeah, I think I think you're absolutely right. And all of the pricing teams that we, are working with or interacting with, we say and what we see is there is that fundamental component of an art and science. And our job is really to help the artist paint a better picture, a richer picture, being able to do it faster and more effectively and more tailored to their what the partner needs or the client needs are. Because, AI can do a lot and it can surface a lot of things, and how we've structured it makes it really focus on the source data, etc. But we are really focused on elevating those individuals to really focus on the human component. And so they don't have to be spending hours and hours of time trying to dig through very unstructured data to try and get those answers. We're able to do that work for them so that they're able to make the artistic kind of components that are critical to winning the deals. And so kind of extending that analogy, we like to say, look, we're here to provide you with the best paintbrushes, the best type of paint, the best canvas, maybe some muses to be able to compare against based on how the firm has done it in the past. And so that you can do your best work and you can make and paint the best picture for you, the firm, the partners, and the clients.
I love it. You mentioned something before that's super important in this sector, which is time to value, ease of adoption. You guys integrate with existing firm systems rather than, replacing them. Maybe talk about the thinking behind that and what it means for that adoption and time to value in practice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's, having experienced a lot of this on kind of now both sides of the fence as a practitioner, but now also on the kind of supply side of things. there are so many priorities and kind of challenges that firms have at the moment. We do not want to add to that. We want to be as streamlined, as easy to work with as possible. And so all of the things we've been building sit on top of existing systems. One, mainly because all the things we're doing in terms of kind of like the pricing or the kind of tracking of the life cycle of matters or the AI analysis or etc., there are no incumbent tools that can do what we're doing, but we are able to sit on top of those core systems. So obviously Narrative is a relatively new company because all of these capabilities were just not possible before, and we're able to leverage that. And so we've been able to structure both the product, but also the commercial arrangements to make sure that, we're really focused on that value piece and showing how quickly, what level of impact we're able to deliver, which is, I think, very different to what folks are used to from incumbent kind of providers. And that's held us up in very good stead, and it's also been the main driver of kind of our growth and the relationships that we're building.
I think it's a really interesting point when you talk about new capabilities that didn't exist previously, things that folks are having to change, maybe behaviors. The downside to that is, especially like AI and legal, there's a bit of a credibility problem. And sometimes there's real skepticism about
Yes.
whether outputs can be trusted in commercial decisions. Do you view Narrative as saying, hey, we actually just have the infrastructure of facts and what historically is true, and we're bringing real data to you that's inaccessible? Like, how do you think about skepticism in this sector?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's something we're very alive to. All of our kind of, one from in terms of the product of how we set everything up. There's so much rigorous testing, controls put in place in terms of outputs and frameworks, and there's structure to what is traditionally a very kind of unstructured area. In addition to that, and what we've kind of adopted philosophically throughout the product, is every source of where we're extracting that information, how we're reasoning different components is surfaced. And the idea being that, look, we might do our very best to make this as accurate as possible, but LLMs will get things wrong, humans will get things wrong. What we do is we say, where did we get that information from? You can dig in at every layer all the way to the source so that you're able to query it. And that's why it's again facilitating that scientific and artistic form for pricing, for LPM, etc., but always tied to source so that everything is visible, everything is transparent, and everything is you can question it, and you can go into all the way to that kind of raw data to see where it came from.
Awesome. I want to end on a point of like your founding journey specifically. You've built and scaled a company before. How does Narrative feel different, and maybe different from your first time around? And what's turned out to matter the most in these early innings?
It's a great question. It's familiar and different. Like, for instance, some of the familiarity kind of points is that most of the team actually used to work with me before at my first one, which is also quite nice because, I'm able to kind of cherry pick a few folks. But you also kind of, you have familiarity, you understand each other, etc. And that helps us execute very quickly on kind of development and product and so on. So that feels familiar. In terms of a lot of the new stuff, I mean, every week there's so much new stuff happening. I mean, my first company was more on the kind of the consumer side of things. Obviously, Narrative is on the enterprise side. Yes, the ability to execute on product, execute in terms of how we're listening to our clients or future clients in terms of what they need, etc. That was all refined in the kind of the first, my first time kind of founding a business. But here we have to obviously a different context. And the nice thing about Narrative is it's kind of bringing both of my kind of experience sets to play in a bit of a unique way, where I leverage my legal training and kind of background there with that kind of founder experience. And it's felt actually quite comfortable. And it's been actually just really nice building, the company, building the relationships. Those all those pieces feel very familiar. In terms of kind of also the tech, that is all new. I mean, every other week, sometimes I have to sit down with my engineering team and be like, okay, guys, we need to, what has happened? Because we have shifted so much. We have shipped so many new things. We have developed so many different capabilities. I need an update because I'm getting surprised by some of the stuff that we're able to do now. So, that's also like the way that I think that you set up companies today versus a few years ago, very different. The expectations of what you can do today versus before, very different. And I think, that's pushing me on a personal level to obviously upskill, update myself as well. Because I think being a founder in this AI age is, it's so much more impactful, so much more dynamic than it was before, and you can feel the difference.
Incredible stuff as always, John. Thank you so much for joining us on In Studio, and we'll see you next time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Great to see you. Ciao.